Welcome to Leadership Untitled, episode 35. We're going to be talking about quiet quitting. I'm sure if you haven't heard, I'm sure that you have heard, I should say, that quiet quitting is a current trend. And that's what we're going to dive into today. Before I get ahead of myself, I have something so incredibly exciting to share. A few months ago, I believe it was in June, I shared that my co-creator, colleague, and friend, Orlando Haynes and I, let's make sure we can see this beauty here. There she is. That we collaborated together to create a career accelerator journal. And after some pivoting and changing the design, the interior remains the same. All of the incredible prompts, questions, thoughtful notes, places where you can write your notes and keep track of your contributions, your projects, your value. All of that remains the same. We made some fun changes to the interior to be sure, to the exterior, to be sure that we could get this planner to you in enough time. And we had some manufacturing shipping with our original vendor. And so here we are. We have actually shipped out our pre-orders, which is such a huge milestone for Orlando and I. And so I'm here to let you know the Career Accelerator Planner is no longer in pre-order. You can go ahead and get your copy and it will be shipped to you right away. So the Career Accelerator Planner, again, it is your one-stop shop for documenting and tracking your projects, your performance, and your value in one place. How many of you have heard, and I've shared this as well, document, document, document. And instead of one spot to document, I have documented on little pieces of paper across multiple notebooks, sticky notes, little notes here and there, or usually not at all. The everyday work that you do, that I do, that our friends and our family, our colleagues do, we don't actually recognize how significant it is in the success of the organization where we work. And so this planner is to remind you to track on a regular basis, to document everything and how to document so that it is effective for you when you are having discussions about changing your job, when you are preparing for an interview, when you are preparing to have compensation discussions. We have the prompts to help you track the information in a way that is strategic and intentional. So please be sure to go visit Career Accelerator Planner to order yours. We're coming into the holiday season. This is an incredible gift to share. So careeracceleratorplanner.com, go visit, pick up your copy today. All right, we're going to jump into the opening right now. In case you haven't noticed, I am in a different location, so the setup is different for those of you who are watching the visual experience of the podcast. It looks different. It is different. My family and I are just away for a couple of weeks, and I still wanted to be able to produce the podcast. So we are here with the bare minimum and making it work. We're going to talk about the bare minimum and what that means, and changing our thoughts about it. But before I get ahead of myself, let me go ahead and play the opening. Quiet quitting. As I said, it is the current trend. But for anybody who's been around, if you're in your 40s like I am, you know that this concept, this phenomenon is not actually new. It is ages old. And when I think about um, quiet quitting, and as I was doing research on it, there's so much rhetoric around the term. What does it mean? And on one hand, I see basically lazy. And on the other hand, I see it's just a pulling back and working to achieve balance. I've heard the term and I've seen the term bare minimum thrown around so much as if that's a negative. And that's where I wanted to start today. That's where I want to start today. I had a clip to play with you, and I'm still learning software here, the podcasting software. And so I couldn't get the sound to work. But what it was is a really funny discussion between a comedian who I follow, Kev on Stage, and his son, Jojo. And Kev on Stage now owns his own business, his own company, entertainment company. But before that, he worked a 9 to 5 job. He was a corporate professional. And he was sharing the story about how he got fired for doing the bare minimum. And his son, Jojo, called him on that. Well, you weren't actually doing the bare minimum if you got fired, because the bare minimum means that you were doing what you needed to do your job. And if you got fired, then that means you weren't doing the bare minimum. And he compared it to grades, right? If you get a C, you didn't fail. But if you're telling me that you failed and you got a C, I'm going to tell you, well, that doesn't match. You couldn't have gotten a C because C is the bare minimum, F is a fail. And that conversation, it was from years ago, but as I was doing research, it jumped into my mind. I went to listen to it. It is incredibly funny. If you want the link to it, please go ahead and message me, DM me. I'll send it to you. It's a very funny clip. What it got me thinking about, though, was what he said, what the son said, bare minimum. We look at that as, and we grade it. That's how he said it. It's a C, right? But I'd love for us to, as we're talking about quiet quitting, to reframe what it means, what bare minimum means, and to look at it in a different light. So, again, as I researched, I learned more about where the term came from and what the original setting is. And if you read the description, I call quiet quitting, the Great Resignation's big sister. So the Great Resignation is like that younger sibling that is impetuous and is just, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. No one can tell me otherwise. And I'm quitting, right? I'm leaving. I'm going to do what I want to do. And quiet quitting is really like that older sister that's responsible and that doesn't make decisions quite so impetuously and has decided that she's going to stay in her job, but she's going to make some changes to it. And that's why I call quiet quitting the resignation's big sister, because they are certainly related. And what I understand is that quiet quitting is the pulling back from as a result of being tired, as a result of being burnt out. And whenever I talk about burnout, I think about episode 2 of Leadership Untitled. By the way, with Kareen Turner, that's me on this podcast. We talk about leadership and operational excellence. So today we're diving in leadership. So when in episode 2 of the podcast, I talk about burnout versus exploitation, where when we label it burnout, we put the responsibility of fixing, of recognizing, of doing the work to get out of it on the employee versus understanding the complex relationship that exists between the employer and the employee, the power dynamic that exists between the employer and the employee, and the role of the employer in burnout. Burnout places all of the responsibility for fixing and correcting on the person. It makes the person feel like they have done something wrong, the employee, like they have done something wrong, that they need to fix themselves, that there's something inherently wrong in them that led them to taking on too much work, to working too many hours, when that's the very system. I'm doing my best not to yell so I don't blow out the microphone for those of you who are listening in headphones. But that is the very system that has been created. The system is designed to get you to work more with less, with little resources, to create magic where there are no items or ingredients for that magic. It is for you to feel like you need to do more in order to keep up, in order to meet the expectations, the rising expectations without the commensurate pay. And even when there is pay, the work often continues to outpace the pay. And so I really don't like the use of the word burnout, but I understand that it is one that we all recognize and that we can place ourselves in. But in using burnout and talking about burnout, I want to be sure that we don't leave out the employer in that conversation and the exploitation side of it. So, in quiet quitting, employees are pulling back from the additional work responsibilities that are added on. The other duties as assigned, or however it is described in a job description, don't apply to the ongoing tasks that are added but never drop off. Other duties as assigned accounts for work that you might do for a week or for an additional project that comes to an end. When the tasks, the projects, and the assignments never come to an end, that is now part of your job description. You've absorbed it as your duty. And so what's happening, our employees are saying no. They are recognizing that the additional hours that they're not compensated for, the additional work that they're not compensated for is leading to an imbalance in their life. They may enjoy the work that they do. They may enjoy the company that they work for to some degree. They may not be in a position to walk away from their role. And so instead, they're taking a stand and saying, I'm pulling back in ways to allow balance in my life. And let me tell you, as I said, there are definitely two camps here as I've been doing my research, but leaders, because this is what we're here to talk about is leadership. Leaders, y'all are mad about the quiet quitting. You're frustrated, you're angry, you don't know what to do. And if by now you haven't caught on, my title for this podcast is clickbait: How to Discipline Employees Who Are Quiet Quitting. No, the answer lies with you. There is no way to discipline employees that are quiet quitting. If employees, through demonstrated consistent ways, are not meeting the expectations of the job, then have a crucial conversation. And of course, I have an episode to guide you through that as well. So be sure to go back and look through the catalog of previous episodes. But when we're talking about quiet quitting and a pulling back from responsibilities, from hours that are not part of the job description, not part of what team members are being compensated for, what are you disciplining? Like, the title was inspired by a Q&A that I saw in the New York Post that was, "Can I discipline my employees for quiet quitting?" And I was just like, "Well, are they doing the work, but you just don't like that they've put up boundaries, and that's what you're going to discipline?" Again, doing your job and not doing your job are two separate things. Not doing the 10 or 15 other tasks that have been added, working an additional 20 to 30 hours a week and saying enough is enough, leaders, that is not what you need to discipline. There's nothing to discipline there. So the title, that question of can I discipline my employees for quiet quitting? I just there's so much frustration and I see it all over the internet that you're in a huff, placing guilt and shame on the employee without accepting any responsibility, taking zero responsibility for the environment that you as a leader are responsible for. I used to watch Shark Tank. I don't anymore, but one of the main stars characters, Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful, who's a fellow Canadian, I'll claim him. He was in an article, and I'm actually going to share it here on the screen. Hopefully, that you can see it. Ah, technology not working with me today. While I will talk through it, let's see. All right, here we go. There we go. I'm getting better and better. Okay. So, I just want to go through the article is um don't try quitting, says Kevin O'Leary. It's a really bad idea. And he goes through 2 points here, and I'm just going to quickly touch on them. Oh, did I lose? Yep, I lost it. I'm trying, y'all. This is live. Okay, let's go to it again. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go through 2 points here. He says, first, employers value hungry, keen workers. People that go beyond to try to solve problems for the organization, their teams, their managers, their bosses are those that succeed in life, O'Leary says. And he says he's looking to hire people who are willing to put in 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. If you're shutting off your laptop at 5 p.m. and going home, you're not working for me, he says. Whew. So, first, I do want to recognize here, he's very clear with what he's looking for and his work environment. As employees and leaders, you are employees as well, unless you're a founder, but you're an employee as well. And we have to remember this as we have these conversations. As you're looking for places to work, we have to take on the responsibility of paying attention and believing what the job description, what the position I just lost my words. This is the wonderful thing about missing a week with podcasting, but what the job posting shares, because there's always keywords that are in the job posting that will let you know the environment. If you get to an interview knowing which questions to ask, and if you want a podcast on that, please let me know. But how to identify the red flags? Here, he's telling you he's looking for someone to work all the time, 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. Don't even think about shutting your laptop at 5 p.m. If someone is telling you and sharing with you who they are, then I want you to listen to them. I want you to believe them. And so take responsibility for understanding the environment that you're going to work in and the people who you are working for. Do your research. I'm going to jump back to the bare minimum because I'm going to again say, can we normalize employees who are content with their role? Can we normalize being okay where with an employee who is satisfied with where they are working? Because not everyone aspires to leadership, not everyone aspires to C-suite, and that's okay. It's beyond okay because these are the team members that show up each and every day faithfully doing the job that you hired them for, fulfilling the job description that you wrote and presented to them. These employees need to be celebrated. Instead, we look at them and we think they're just doing the bare minimum. They're just showing up and doing what they need to do, and then they're leaving. Yes, because that's what you hired them to do. That's the pay that they are receiving. They're not lazy. They're not unambitious. They have other priorities in their lives. And their career enrichment might look different than mine. One of my goals was definitely to aspire to leadership, but it doesn't make me better. It just makes me different. My career enrichment came in my career progression, growing through title changes and moving into leadership. Other team members have different ways in which they are career enrichment. And so just because they're coming in every single day and doing their job and leaving isn't reason to cast aspersions to them. Again, these are the team members, the employees that we need to celebrate. They are who is keeping the operations of your organization or your department running. And you need to say thank you. Because if all of us aspire to keep moving up and up and up, who's doing the work? Who's doing the work? So let's celebrate and recognize that we're different, but being different doesn't make one person better and the other person worse. Let's celebrate the fact that we all have different goals in life and that everyone plays a role. These team members are not slacking, they are showing up and they are living up to the contractual obligation that you set into place. And so when they don't want to take an extra shift for overtime, when they don't want to work 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, when they set a boundary and say, no, you can't text me after hours. I'm not going to answer to a text at 9 p.m. And in fact, don't text me at 9 p.m. That's my time. It does not mean that they are slacking. It does not mean that they are lazy. These are employees who understand with clarity what they are looking for. And if you have a team member who in the past has said, this is okay, and has not said anything, but now they're saying enough is enough, then respect it and understand that they're setting boundaries. And that's hard as a leader. I understand when someone who you've gotten into a groove with, but unless it's in their job description, unless you are changing pay and having meaningful and intentional conversations, we have to normalize living up to the contract that we set into place, that you as the organization, as the founder, has set into place. So let's jump back to the article here. Second, O'Leary says you need a strong financial base to afford choosing how you want to structure your life in days. Limiting the hours you work per day, he says, is not conducive to the kind of success that brings freedom, especially early in life. This was hilarious to me because this was hilarious to me because it makes the assumption that if I work harder, I get more pay. And let's all raise our hand here. There are especially women and especially women of color. That is not the case. Historically, statistically, all of the ways that you can measure, it is not work harder, make more money. It is actually the opposite. When you begin to work more hours per week, your compensation is diluted. You go from making maybe $60 an hour to making $20 an hour because you're working 100 hours a week. You're filling 3 or 4 different roles. You are not being compensated accordingly. So working hard, working the 25 hours a day, 8 days a week leads to exploitation, also known as burnout, but exploitation of team members. And it's not the way to be successful early in life and to gain financial freedom early in life. You have to be doing the most to get financial freedom from just your 9 to 5 job. That's another story. So this is false, especially for women in the workplace. So now let's go back. I said my title today was inspired by a Q&A, and I understand leaders, like, the power trip is real, and I know as you're listening to me, sometimes leadership experts haven't been in the trenches, but I've been there and I have fallen, I've stumbled, I've also recovered in this area. And at the heart of quiet quitting truly is engagement. It's engagement. And then, of course, the practical side of leadership that includes planning and organizing, coordinating, directing, motivating, just to name a few. So when you notice that your employees are disengaging or behaviors that you associate with quiet quitting, I want you to do 3 things. one of those three things or none of those three things is discipline. So, spoiler alert, it's not discipline. So, the first one, stop and analyze the work environment or the team member. If it's one person in particular that has you concerned, that has you frustrated, get out of your feelings and truly look at the situation. Think about the team member, or if it's the whole environment, think about the team members. What has been their performance? What additional responsibilities have you added on? What additional responsibilities have the team taken on? Have you recognized them lately? Have you said thank you for taking it on? Have you had a meaningful conversation about pay? And you are you understaffed? Look at the whole picture, look at the environment. So much of leadership is self-reflection, even though that's painful, but it's also ownership, which is also painful because you own the environment that's being created. You own the culture that is being created. And so it's important for you to stop and analyze the work environment that exists and truly answer those questions. What additional work has gone on? What does the past 6 months look like to lead to this change in behavior? Then I want you to re engage with your team. When was the last time that you had a team meeting where you actually communicated a plan with them, talked about the plan moving forward, where you address the issues? As leaders, we can't treat our team members like children. They are adults who are partners with you. Yes, there's a power dynamic there, but they're still partners with you achieving a goal. So treat them as such. Let them know because they know what the problems are, even if you don't tell them. And there are some things, of course, that are sensitive and use your discretion. But our discretion sometimes is to hold everything back and not let anything out. And in doing that, it creates a barrier. So decide what you truly use your discretion and decide what you want to share with your team and talk about a plan, the plan to change, the plan to communicate the barriers to success and how they can play a role, what input you need from them in order to be successful. Re engage your team. If someone is willing to be in a place that's not their home for 40 plus hours a week, the bulk of 7 days in a week, they're spending somewhere outside of their home, they're invested and they would love to be enriched. There's always going to be outliers, but for the most part, if someone is choosing to work for you, work for your organization, they want to be engaged. They want to be motivated to do the work. So engage them or re engage them so that they feel that they are part of the team, part of the solution. And the last step is have a conversation with key team members. We will talk to everyone, won't we? We'll talk to our family members, we'll talk to other colleagues. Unfortunately, some leaders will also talk to their team. Some leaders will talk to their team members about other team members, which is absolutely wrong. But we'll talk to everyone about a situation instead of just sitting down with the person and having a conversation. Of course, from an HR perspective, you can't dive into their personal life, but it's okay for you to say, I've noticed a change here in work and I wanted to talk to you about it. Is everything okay? Is there something in the work environment that I can help with? It's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to be uncomfortable and awkward. It is also okay for your team member to respond back to you honestly, and that you need to be prepared to take responsibility for what they're sharing and not get defensive. So stop and analyze, find ways to re-engage your team with open communication. And three, have conversations with team members, one-on-one conversations with team members to say that you have noticed a difference, not from a disciplinary or punitive stance, from a place of curiosity. That's from Crucial Conversations, the book, that you are adding to the pool of meaning by showing up first curious to have an understanding of what's happening. So, again, as leaders, we need to take ownership of what is happening in the work environment. It is not our first instinct. Your first instinct can't be, how do I discipline? Because that already tells me the work environment that you are creating, have created, or are allowing to fester. And it really falls to us to do that investigative deep work. And to employees, team members who are listening, not every workplace is going to be ideal. And, that's part of making the decision of where you're going to work. And there are team members, there are people out there who want high, that fast paced environment. And that's also okay because those workplaces exist. But if you're listening to this and you're wondering, how can I lead with intention? How can I lead with compassion so that I show respect for the people who are helping me be successful so that we can keep going on the road to success? Then this podcast episode is one that you should listen to, and it's also one that you should share. So I thank you for listening. I thank you for being here. Let me know, have you noticed in your work environment quiet quitting? And as leaders, have you taken a step back and have done your own quiet quitting, whether in the role you're in now or in a previous role? Because leaders are employees as well. And I've been there where I've said, you know what? I have to pull back for my own health. It's not a big announcement, it happens gradually. But I also want to affirm you as leaders that it's okay for you to set boundaries too. Because you are in a leadership role does not mean that you automatically have signed on to 24-hour a day response 8 days a week. So again, if you like this episode, which I know you did, please be sure to share it, listen to it with your team to spark conversation. When you share it, you are, of course, helping to build a community of influential and compassionate leaders. I'll see you next time.